The NCAA has announced that colleges, the universities, will be allowed to pay players.
Yeah, up to a $20.5 million revenue share.
Yep. So the House versus NCAA settlement was officially ratified on Friday, clearing the way for universities to directly pay athletes starting in 2025. The settlement is expected to formally take effect on July 1st, and after it was approved by a judge at the United States District Court in Northern District of California. So this is, you said the salary cap essentially
Pretty much, yeah.
will be right around $20 million. That figure is intended to cover all athlete compensation across varsity sports. So that $20 million is not just designated to football, not just designated. That is for the entire athletic department, essentially.
But so this settlement also includes, on top of this, the $2.8 billion, that's with a B, in back payments for athletes who competed between 2016 and 2024. So they get to pay athletes that also competed back then.
So guys like Lamar, Baker.
Yep. Not that they need the money.
No, but they're going to get a little bit of change from these universities.
Yeah, if I'm those guys, I'd take that.
Like, take it and put it in your football NIL fund,
or give it to charity or something. You know what I
mean? I mean that's what depending on what sport you play, that's what I would do. Obviously, if you're a former, Kentucky Louisville basketball player that didn't pan out in the NBA, needs the money, sure, take it. But if I'm, like I said, Lamar, Baker, guys like this that they're going to get compensation for what they didn't get when they were there, I would just tell them, hey, take whatever money you're going to give me, put it in the football NIL fund, put it in the basketball NIL fund. So that's what I would do. But here would be my question now, is how does this affect everything going forward? Because what if schools now keep in mind, this does not affect NIL as a whole. This is still, kids can decide if they want to take the money from universities or they want to take it from sponsorships. It doesn't really matter. It's still up to the player, essentially. But my question would be, if universities start using this for players, I would be almost willing to bet that universities, when they start offering this money, put in their clause that you can't transfer out.
If they were smart, they'd do that.
Hey, we're going to sign you to this deal. If you agree to sign to this deal, maybe not transfer out like you can't leave all 4 years, but maybe like you're guaranteed to be here 2-3 years.
Yeah, I mean, these schools are investing in these players. Yep. I mean, it's just like any other professional sport at this point. You sign a contract to play with this team for this amount of years, and we'll pay you this amount over 2 years or 3 years, whatever you sign.
Which I'm also surprised with NIL, with some major companies being in certain states, tied to certain universities, that hasn't been put in clauses before.
Maybe they have,
and I mean, maybe they have. We've never seen the fine print.
But you will. But see, that's the thing, because schools weren't directly paying them. It's different. These third-party people can come in and they can get paid wherever they go. Doesn't matter where they go to school. And now that the schools will be paying them, that is completely different. You are playing. You're getting paid by the organization that you're playing for. That's quite different. I feel like that's probably why you haven't seen it.
So according to this article on CBS Sports, it does say there are a few guidelines in place for how the money should be distributed across all sports.
I'm sure.
So it says the expectation is that
percentages.
The expectation is that 70% of the funds will go to football in the Power Fives, which is roughly about $15 million will go to Power Five football conferences. However, individual schools that have discretion to allocate funds as they choose, for example, Kentucky or UConn, could decide to spend 50% of their budget on men's basketball. Non-football schools in the conference, like the Big East, could gain a major advantage when it comes to funding and other programs. So it says which schools will be eligible. Any NCAA schools that opted into the House settlement will be allowed to participate. Schools in the Big 12, Big 10, SEC have all confirmed that they will pay out the full $20 million rev share each season. The AAC, notably, is requiring schools to rev share $10 million with their athletes over the next 3 years. Sacramento State, who's an FCS school hoping to transition to FBS, also intends to share revenue. So, and then it says who will administer the new sport. In the wake of the settlement, Power Four conferences will take over regulation and enforcement of player compensation issues. The plan is to create an organization called the College Sports Commission and will hire a CEO soon after the settlement power conference schools will be pressured to sign on to new organization. So this is where we could see the Big Ten and SEC say we're going on our own.
See ya. Yeah, possible.
This could be what moves that needle quicker.
Like a lot quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, and then again, new agreement will allow players to sign outside contracts. However, a new wrinkle requires NIL contracts to be sent through a clearinghouse run by I'm not really sure about that, to ensure fair market value based on an actual endorsement. For example, a rotation offensive lineman could potentially make six figures in the NIL era, while they will still be allowed to do that with revenue sharing. Future NIL contracts are expected to be far more stringent. So NCAA has the right to prohibit NIL compensation from a group it classifies as associated wow, I can't read today. So would seem to mean the booster. So yeah, so NCAA can like flag like booster NILs. So take a player like Cooper Flagg, for instance. His brand value would be considered high for Duke, which would allow the school to pay him for an endorsement without pulling from their revenue sharing money. So
that Deloitte or whatever, that's a accounting firm. It's one of the big four.
So basically, all NIL contracts have to go through them. Make sure that it is a fair market value contract, which I don't know why the example they decided to use in this article was a rotation offensive lineman. But
I do think overall this is better for college sports because they're adding some regulations to this stuff now. Not so much, I guess, for the outside NIL deals, but that's kind of a separate entity anyway. They can't really control what the player does.
Here's another interesting stat. Deloitte came out and said they said that 90% of existing NIL contracts with public companies would have been approved with this new system.
96? Oh, 90%. Huh?
But more than 70% of deals with booster collectives would have been denied.
Does it say why?
It says the rule is to intend to prevent schools from using fake NIL deals to base it around the salary cap. However, the likelihood of this is highly dependent on whether the Deloitte-run clearinghouse will have any teeth. At least one high-profile sports lawyer has argued for athletes to refuse to disclose NIL deals to the clearinghouse. It remains to see how the NCAA will attempt to handle the case cap. So I don't know. Again, I think this is where we could see the Big Ten and SEC say, bye, I'm out. So, because if you're hiring a CEO for this, they could say, we're just going to take our own, move away from the Power Four, create our own, hire our own CEO, and do our own thing. Now that we can just pay players ourselves. Because here's the thing.
Well, if they were going to leave the NCAA like that,
they would, but schools could generate that $20 million like that. Especially those Power Four schools.
Maybe in those conferences, yeah.
So they'll be able to develop that. They'll be like, all we have to come up with is essentially $20 million for the athletic department. No problem. We'll be able to come up with that.
I don't know. Again, this is just one step. That I think it's adding regulations to all of this, which it needed to have that. And this is going to change again. Because
this is going to be a yearly change.
I don't know, maybe not yearly, but I mean tweaks. But I think this, in the next 5 years, this could change again because either this didn't work or they're going to lose SEC, Big Ten, stuff like revenue like that from the NCAA because they're going to go out and do their own thing. Like it's going to be a forever moving cycle. I just don't. But this is a good first step, I think, for this. And then I think the NCAA knows at this point they're going to have to work with these conferences to make this work. So they're going to have demands from this, I'm sure. And
I would not be surprised when schools start signing if these are like professional contracts, kind of like in terms
100% what it's going to be.
But like what I'm saying is like in terms of like I talked about earlier with you can't transfer out. Like they're going to be like, hey, if you do this, this is a 4-year deal, like or a 3-year deal. You can't, and there is no, and if you opt out, you owe this much back to the university.
I could see that transfer, yes, but the pro rule stays in its effect. They can't.
Well, yeah. Well, no, yeah. But they'll probably have something in there like NIL does, where hey, we still, because if you look at, I know a lot of NIL deals. People have said if you look, they're like, especially with football players, they're 5 to 6 year deals where even your first 2 to 3 years in the league potentially. They're still with you.
Okay.
So
yeah, then that makes sense. But that'd be
Well, I
crazy.
mean, I could see that. I could see them going, "Hey, 5-year deal." So that way, if you play all 4 years, great. Then we have you through your first year in the NFL just in case anything happens, or we have you for your first 2 years in the NFL.
I really like that this could potentially not fix, but balance out the transfer portal a little bit because
I don't know if it will, because again, these players still have the option to do the school cap or whatever, take money from the school. Because they could just say, no, we're not going to take money from the school. We'll just stay with our NIL deals and have our own freedom.
But can't the school say no?
No,
Like
I
the
mean,
school,
no, they don't, because the players still have the option to take money from the school.
well, what I'm saying is if they take the money from the school, they're going to have something in their contract that
Oh,
says,
well,
okay,
yeah,
you got
yeah,
to play
yeah,
2 years.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure they will.
You can't transfer in 2 years. You can go pro.
Or if you do transfer, you owe this X amount of dollars back to the school.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The outside stuff can transfer, obviously, but I wonder, can the school deny a outside NIL deal though? Like, hey, we don't want you to have that because it's going through
Well, it
that
would have to be in the
clearinghouse,
contract. It would have to be a, hey,
something like that.
if you sign this deal, with the University of Alabama or whatever, then any other outside NIL deals are going to be, or you can't sign with these specific NIL deals. Your list of being able to who you can, partner with as well is this list right here. And it's probably all companies or whatever that partner with the school specifically.
Yeah, I don't know. This is interesting, and it's right now. Like they can do
Yeah, and
it.
now it's just going to be thrown in right,
I mean,
right in the middle
now.
of baseball season right now, right before football starts up. So I don't think we'll really see, because football's already essentially started. Freshmen have pretty much already started hitting campus. I don't think you'll see this affect football till next year, really. Unless these schools, try to take advantage of this being right now and trying to, get their players to sign with them real quick, which is a
I
possibility.
mean,
But I don't think you'll see the full effect of this until next football season. I think you'll see bits and pieces of it maybe this year, here and there. But a lot of these guys, have outside NIL deals, and they're not going to cut their outside NIL deals right now just to sign with the school.
Yeah, maybe so, and maybe that's why they're doing it. They're just saying, all right, you can do it now. Some
Yeah,
schools
because
might
the
use it.
NCAA probably knows, hey, this might take
This is going to take
year
some time.
two for you to even, pick up on it. So we'll see. Again, I think
good first step, though.
it could have an effect on the transfer portal if these kids do decide to stand with the school. Because if you're smart, if you're a university, you would put something in there that says
At least for transferring.
Yeah,
Going pro,
or they may do what the NCAA does, or we used to do, and say, hey, you have to, like, it has to be like a legitimate reason, like why you're leaving.
like coaches leave.
Yeah,
Like if your head coach leaves, you can
well, I would
avoid it.
that could be touchy at
I
times.
don't know.
But like I was going more so, you've got family issues going on at home, a family member that just passed away, you're wanting to go back home, you can transfer, you're at Alabama, you're from Florida, you go to a university and go, hey, grandma just died back at home. I want to go back home, be with my mom. So I would like to transfer to, let's just say Florida State. And the school can go, oh, well, okay,
Well, they can let them out. They can let them out of the contract if they want. That's not a big deal. But.
Which that'll probably be in there that the university can, opt out at any time as well. So because I'm sure that's going to be a thing too. If these players decide to sign with schools, they get in trouble outside, the university can go, listen, you do anything like that, we can cut our ties, cut our contract.
That's going to be in the contract too.
So Georgia players might be in trouble.
They might need to get their shit together.
Georgia players may need to learn how to drive, okay, and drive while not intoxicated. So we'll see. Again, I think this is going to be a year or two before we see this go into full effect of where it might start affecting things. But we'll see. It is a step in the right direction, though. So, yeah. Any closing thoughts, Doug?